So I recently got together with a guy from my hobby. He asked me out first and I had some doubts that we'd work together as a couple because of the age difference. He's 35 and I'm 22. So, in my apartment, since it's an old house that was originally a single-family house, there isn't much soundproofing. And the floors creak when people move. I've gotten used to the sound of the guy upstairs getting up at 4 a.m. since he starts work at 5. And the sound of the girls in the apartments to either side of mine watching telenovelas till midnight, taking work calls all day and having friends over on weekend nights. I know when I play music or have friends over, some of the sound leaks through the walls. So I'd never get upset about hearing my neighbors because it goes both ways. So, when my boyfriend started coming over more often, he had complaints about the neighbors, which put me in an awkward place. He wanted to go speak to them or have me text them and I said no. For example, one of the early times he stayed over we went to bed around 10. He wanted me to ask my neighbor to turn down her TV. I said she didn't have it that loud and she turns it off at midnight anyway. At 4 a.m., he got very irritated with my upstairs neighbor getting up and cooking breakfast. I said that he would be done by 5 because that's when his shift starts. At 7 a.m., he was still trying to sleep in and the neighbor on the other side had some work calls that he said he couldn't sleep through. I offered him earplugs and he said he couldn't sleep with them in either. He wanted me to ask her to quiet down. He had similar comments every time he heard someone else in the building just living their life, especially if it was when he was in bed. I got frustrated with my boyfriend and told him, you can't expect to date a hot young 22-year-old and not want to deal with a 22-year-old's living situation. I don't know if you realize, but this is a normal apartment for someone my age. Hell, my neighbors are pretty great. Nobody's throwing loud parties on work nights. Nobody's having screaming fights. Nobody's having babies. The hot young part was in sarcastic air quotes because those were his words, not mine. He got irritated and asked why I was bringing age into it. And I said it's because he can't both want someone so young and also want someone with house kinda money. And he was being so out of touch with how normal people in their 20s live. He got really irritated with me bringing age into it. And even more annoyed when I'd respond to his neighbor complaints in the future with, okay, boomer. Or tell him that if he wanted me to have a rich person apartment, he could pay for it. It's not possible for me to get to his house on my own because I don't have a car and the buses don't go that far into the suburbs. So that would mean him driving 30 minutes from his house in the suburbs to pick me up, then an extra 30 to drive me to his house. Then an hour round trip early in the morning to get me home in time for work. It's a lot easier for him to visit me in the city. I am using boomer as a joke or a figure of speech to say acting out of touch and entitled to tell other people what to do. It is a common figure of speech to say, okay, boomer, to someone who is acting entitled regardless of their actual age. It's more of a mindset thing. I googled his property records for his house and he owns it with a woman who shares his last name. Holy shit. I don't know if she's his wife or ex-wife or what, but I'm out of here. I'm honestly freaking out right now, but I just gotta say, great big thank you to everyone who noticed red flags and made me question that. I've blocked his number. He can have fun figuring out where I went. My husband Tim has a serious dairy allergy. I'm talking about an actual immune system reaction, not intolerance. His allergy is serious enough to cause acute enterocolitis, but he hasn't needed an EpiPen since he was a kid. I work full-time and also have some seasonal work this holiday season because Tim has been without work. And money has been very tight. As a result, I barely get to rest. The holidays are especially hard, and I found myself getting just one day off every 2 weeks for almost 2 months straight. As you can imagine, that day off means the universe to me. Now, Tim loves dairy, and will sometimes intentionally eat things which trigger his allergy. Lately, it's gotten out of hand, with him going from one risky meal every 4 to 6 months, to every 2 or so weeks. In fact, it always seemed to coincidentally line up with my time off, and I found myself spending my one day taking care of him. Last week, I finally asked him if he was intentionally timing it to line up with my day off. I fully expected him to say no, but he admitted that he was doing it to make sure that he'd have a nurse. And so he'd have someone close by in case he had an especially adverse reaction and needed a hospital. I was livid, and told him that he was selfish, robbing me of my rest. I said that if he made himself sick again, I wouldn't take care of him. I'm exhausted and I need to decompress. He didn't say much, so I thought he'd heard me. Fast forward to Friday night. I get home from work, and a few minutes in, Tim gets a pizza delivered. I ask him why, when I'm making dinner, and he shrugs. I ask if a large garlic Alfredo pizza is worth the pain, and remind him that I won't be giving up my rest day again. He smirks and eats an entire slice while grinning at me. I left it at that and went back to my dinner. Predictably, he got sick, profusely vomiting, retching and groaning from the intense cramping and diarrhea. I slept in the guest room to get away from the sound and smell. He called for me several times and I repeatedly told him no. Hours later, he was still sick and woke me up at the crack of dawn to go get him Pedialyte and meds because he was very dehydrated and still in pain. I told him to order it in and asked him to get out and let me sleep. He was still whimpering when I eventually got up to shower and eat. Again, I did nothing to help or comfort him. By evening, he was sulking, and by morning when I had to work, he was enraged. He yelled, and by the end of the day he told our friends and family that he nearly died and I neglected him. His family accused me of passively trying to kill him. His mom called, shouting that he could have had a life-threatening reaction due to my petty actions, and that I'm a shit wife for not minding his health. I'm starting to feel guilty because she's right and he could have been seriously hurt. Yesterday, I wanted to surprise him by cooking one of his favorite meals, and although I was busy, I took time off work to cook. I even went grocery shopping to get what I needed. Later, as I was setting the table, his mom called. I told him he didn't have to answer, but he did. Like usual, she asked what we were having but acted surprised that I cooked this meal. She then went on to tell him she cooked meal and told him to come over. He said okay, which shocked me. I said, seriously? As he started dressing up getting ready to leave. He told me no offense, but this meal, that his mom cooked, was even more of a favorite than the one I cooked. And grabbed his keys and left. I felt awful. I took his plate and threw it out, then ate my portion. As I was about to put the plate in the dishwasher, he got home looking angry, saying his mom lied about cooking that favorite meal and used it as an excuse to force him to eat dinner with her. I was shocked, but he sat down telling me to go ahead and reheat dinner. I told him no dinner after he abandoned it. I threw it out. He said what? And I told him he disrespected my time and effort and chose to go eat with his mom instead. He began yelling at me, asking if I really did that, then called me petty and horrible, then went upstairs saying what I did was 100 times worse than what his mom did. I definitely feel like I let my anger and frustration get the best of me, but it really felt unbearable having to live like this for so long. By the way, I'm 26 and he's 28. To make one thing clear, and that's the fact that my husband only does this when it comes to food. He lived with his mom, attended community college, and loved and still loves her food and is used to it. She gave me recipes to make and I try to do that, but he keeps switching homes just to eat what he feels like. I will be sitting down with my husband soon. After he breaks the silence, I'm just giving him the space he said he wanted. I will also be pushing for couples counseling, although he's always been against it, but we'll see how things go. I'm not gonna lie, I still feel upset and like my efforts aren't being appreciated. His mom is definitely onto something with her little upsetting stunts. I realize how important boundaries are, but also realize how enforcing can be difficult. I'm hoping and praying that we will tackle this issue so that our marriage won't suffer, but if he's still somehow unable to do his part, then that's on him, and I'm no longer willing to go through similar stuff and just take it. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years, 8 months engaged. We've had our ups and downs, but for the most part things have been pretty great, until she moved in 6 months ago. We've been combining our lifestyles and finances, basically easing into merging our lives together. The problem is she's a people pleaser, in her own words. She's been in therapy for 6 years, and I guess I never knew how bad it was until moving in with her. A lot of which she's hidden from me. She recently was promoted into accounts payable at her company and realized she is the lowest paid person on payroll. She didn't negotiate a good starting wage, and has never asked for a raise, or had one, despite multiple promotions. She inherited a car a few months ago and sold it. She had offers online from $18,000 to $25,000, but sold it to the first person who showed up for $10,000. She caught someone stealing her bike at college. The woman stealing the bike managed to convince my fiancé that it was actually her bike, and my fiancé just let her take it, despite the fact that she caught the woman cutting her bike lock. Last spring was my 30th birthday and she ordered a giant chocolate cake for the party. The cake normally comes with nuts, but given my allergy for nuts, she ordered it without them. Well, when she went to pick it up and it had nuts on it, she just paid for it and brought it home. I couldn't even be in the same room as the cake. Which brings us to tomorrow. My father recently passed away and I need to fly to the other end of the country to get things sorted out with family, attend the funeral, etc. Meanwhile, we recently had a pipe burst in our home, and the contractors will be out tomorrow to fix it. My flight's at 6 a.m. and my fiancé will have to handle it, including all the negotiations because we don't know the extent of the damages. I've been giving it a lot of thought and I just don't trust my fiancé to handle it. And if I can't trust or rely on her to do something like this, how can we really be life partners? I mean, I trust that she is always looking out for me and has my best interest at heart, but I can't trust her to get things done. We've talked about it a few times before, but it's been unproductive. She's convinced she's just being nice and doesn't like confrontation, then brings up examples of extremely confrontational people. I think she puts her aversion to conflict above her / our long-term goals, and she needs to find a happy medium. She doesn't understand how negatively this is impacting her life. But at the same time, we've had some amazing years together and she really is a great person. We're compatible in almost every other way.